Hi everybody, I am Julia Anchorhaven and this is episode 8 of my full disclosure diary. So I'm creating this diary in August 2025 because I've had quite a few big downloads of information or strange experiences or realizations because of the Lionsgate portal. So it reset something in my energy for sure, and I'm recovering from an ankle foot surgery which happened in July. So I've had a lot of time in the last 2 months to do extra meditation work, do extra remote viewing work. And I've had a couple of sessions with people in the community that have helped me clarify a few details. So recently I had a session with Sean Bond from Psionic League and Christy Campbell, CC33, and I've been having ongoing sessions with David Purcell. So we try and do a weekly meetup if we can, just to discuss what we're both experiencing, because we're both experiencing quite a lot, me and David. So in this episode, I just want to talk about the Montauk project, the Project Phoenix 2, I think it is, and how even though I'm British, I was still in that project. And this has been referenced in it was referenced the very first time in February 2025 when I had a session with Sean Bond and he could see that information psychically. Then I had a session with Jessica Ariel Morocco, a private session, and again the Montauk umbrella came up then. Then I went on to have an interview with Peter the Insider and Jessica Morocco through the ACIO. And Peter has access to files, like multi-dimensional military files is kind of how I process it in my mind. And the Montauk came up then, and also my involvement in the Merge project, which is the Monarch Umbrella refugee group. But specifically talking about the Montauk, it always kind of bothered me, like, if I was taken and I'm here in the UK, how would I have been taken? How is that possible? And we know that there's loads and loads, like millions of clones of me that have been taken from childhood. From when I was a baby, my DNA was mapped and clones were created. They were all over the planet. They were used off planet as well. And my soul essence was used in those clones. So these are alters of me. So the earliest reference of me being taken for military abduction is basically from birth, and then like age 3, age 5, and ongoing. And I had a session with Sean Bond, and we did this live on his channel. We were doing a vision quest with the intention of trying to open up my memories, trying to open up my psionics a bit more to see just what we could, get through. Because I've always had this question of, well, if I'm surrounded by ETs all the time, why can't I see them? Yeah, so I wanted to be able to release these kind of it's like the shutters in the way of my vision. So sometimes I can have a download and it's fully holographic and it's in color and things like that, and other times it will be very grey but I can still make out shadows, and other times nothing comes. So we did the vision quest to get very relaxed, very deep into my subconscious, and I was starting to retrieve memories from the back of my mind. It's a very different experience from when I'm like getting other recall coming in from clone aspects of me and stuff like that from the echo chain. So in my ACIO video, Peter the Insider talked about Liverpool, which is, I live near there. So and that's basically near where I'm from. So we talked about in the 1950s there was a lab that I was working in. So this is time displaced. This is not a linear memory, not a linear record kind of thing. It's all time displaced, multiple versions of me and stuff like that. And so there was a lab in Liverpool which was supposedly based on a polygon, like an underground research facility, which was military, and there was a big lab disaster. So I'm just popping that in there for reference for future videos. I think I've mentioned it in the past, but there's no record of this lab disaster on file because it was basically wiped from existence. Okay, but opposite where this supposed polygon is, on my side of the river, there is a shipping yard, and this shipping yard is quite old. goes back to the early 1900s, I think. Let me just find some information here. So when I was looking into the research of that shipping yard, like, it's the kind of the town I live in, it's always there in the skyline. It's always been there since I was a child. And I was told by the ACIO that I was taken there. I was taken there to be put into the Montauk existence, and I didn't understand how that would be possible. Sean Bond also references that I was taken to the shipping yard into pocket realities for martial arts training and assassin training and things like that. So I always wondered, how is that possible? How is that possible? It's a really big place. I think there's a lot of buildings now that have been demolished on that site, but to give you an idea, this shipping yard was basically, even the Titanic went through this shipping yard at some point for while it was being built. And you know, naval ships have been repaired or built there. Even submarines have been built there in the past. So it's a pretty major shipping yard in the UK. And so I always wondered, how is that possible? So when I had my vision quest with Sean Bond, we got into a relaxed state and we were trying to find a keystone memory. He said, go back to a keystone memory. So something that's really strong and it's been there since the beginning. And I went straight back to that shipping yard, which was like half a mile, less than half a mile from my house. But this time I saw myself inside the shipping yard, and I've never been inside to my recollection, but I could see it was nighttime. I could see there was like floodlights. There was lots of people there. There was people queuing to enter a shipping container. And shipping containers, obviously in that kind of place, there'd be loads, you know, but this was kind of like by itself. We were like in the middle of something, and there's buildings on one side and there's other containers on the left, and we were all kind of standing there in a queue. And in my video with Sean Bond, you see, oh, I must be altered out because I'm just patiently waiting in this queue, like, you know, just doing what I'm told. There's no emotion there or whatever, I'm just in the queue. And then he's saying, okay, go into the shipping container. When I looked inside, what I could see was technology. I could see that there was like a small Stargate within the shipping container. So this is future technology, because the age range on this memory, I was between 8 and 11 years old. And I think I was getting a wide range because it was a multiple kind of memory. Like it was very familiar. I'd done that process many times perhaps. So I could see inside the shipping container that there was clamps on the floor and clamps on the ceiling, and inside was a light portal, like a swirling light portal, and it was bright, maybe bluish and white, not too sure. And but you had to just step through, like it was Stargate SG-1 kind of thing. You had to step through, and I was prompted to step through, and then I found myself in the Montauk space. And I knew it was Montauk because it was very dark, it had that horrible eerie chill feeling, and there were cages there, so I knew it was the Montauk space. So then I started to research after that kind of vision quest, which is available on Sean's channel, psionically. How would that be possible? How would I be taken there without people knowing? And I started to do some research into that particular base, that shipping base, and I started to have a look at the history of the base, basically over the last 150 years or whatever. And it talks about covert launches of ships for America that was slipped out of that river and became a Confederate raider, CSS Alabama, you know, and that was in 1862, and it talks about incidents in the early 1900s there. It talks about bombing in World War II, talks about other things and the Blitz, and then in 1984 they were starting to close down the base. So in 1984 I would have been 9 years old, okay? So there was mass redundancies and workers occupied a gas rig at the yard. So there's like the shipping yard, and then right next to it these big oil refineries or whatever they are there. So in 1984 they were looking to shut down the base, and it's quite possible that this was happening because we had these nefarious things that were going to be taking over at that location or at part of that location. So there was a handover, and of a ship. Let me just find more information here. So it shows that it kind of changed hands around that time as well. And there's not a lot of information. There's nothing there citing children there. However, there's a potential connection between that site and the aerospace, okay, which has been popping up into my kind of awareness more and more. So it was kind of taken over and made part of aerospace at one point, and then there was another group that came in a bit later on. So I started to ask my ChatGPT or whatever and do some research on the internet for unusual experiences that had happened there, and what came up was a time slip experience at that location. And so I found the original, well, not original, but I found an article that had been written in a local newspaper about an event. It was written 5 years ago about an event that happened in the 1960s. About a time slip at that location, and the story goes on to tell about a gentleman in the 1960s, Frank Burnley Wood, who had created something to allow him to fly over the river. So, and let me just find what he'd created. So he created an autogyro, a type of miniature two-seated helicopter, and he made this from military surplus parts acquired from his friends in the Air Force, and also bits and pieces taken from a scrapyard. So he wasn't a pilot, he didn't have a pilot's license, but he was obviously an inventor and creative. And there was an incident on Christmas Eve in 1964, when a friend of his nephew needed to get across the river to Liverpool, and they were going to use the autogyro to do that. Okay, so I'm just going to read here from this article. So the autogyro was pushed out of his backyard. They had a long run up for it. He was wearing a helmet and a jacket over a boiler suit with boots on, everything. 160 yards long runway. The machine was... let me just see. There's a problem with the police there. So, but he did get into the air. Okay, the autogyro curved into the southeast at an altitude of 1,100 feet. Okay, so he was heading towards Liverpool, which was 4.5 miles southeast, and he said a loud roar above sent him trembling, but it looked like a Cambrian Airways jet headed for the Speke Airport. But he found that he was flouting all aviation laws with this machine, and as he landed in Sefton Park, the boy staggered away. He took to the skies for the return journey, and he was passing over the shipping yard, CL. And he experienced something odd. So it was daytime now below him, and there were vast stretches of landing pads apparently going over the river as well, with a gigantic flying saucer-like craft on them. One gargantuan craft was being built at the shipping yard, and the experiencer reasoned that he was seeing the future. But minutes later, the vision faded away and darkness returned because it was nighttime, it was Christmas Eve. So he made a perfect landing near his home, and he drove his machine back. So this particular shipping yard is well known for making iron ships, nuclear submarines, but looks like in the future it's also making craft, spacecraft or whatever, unidentified aerial phenomenon. So it just kind of it piqued my interest there. Not only does it have kind of a weird history of being handed over through different corporations that are potentially linked to aerospace, but it also has somebody that has a first kind of, a witness experience of seeing it in its own time space. So there's things going on at this base that are outside space and time, and that kind of fits in with the Montauk. And so if I was potentially taken there as a child numerous times, they would have created their own time anomaly to do that. Plus they were using it was like a temporary portal technology, but that would have been a fixed point-to-point technology, which is different to what we were doing at Montauk, allegedly, which is like a time soldier technology. So we were used for our psionic abilities to open portals across space and time, allegedly. So I'm just starting to get into the Montauk stuff. It's not something that I've allowed myself to look at very much before. Quite a few people have said, yeah, they can see that I was there. It's come up in my ACIO files, but I always wondered, how was it possible? But I've been told by 3 different people that that shipping yard near me has been used in the projects, multiple projects across time, in different pockets of existence. That shipping yard has been used. So it does make sense that they would take somebody who potentially has those abilities, who has a history of family within the military and the naval, and we would be taken for testing and things like that. So for anybody who believes that the Montauk project was just for Americans, that's not true. People were taken from all over the planet into that project, and there were multiple projects. I think it wasn't just this one version that a lot of people are recalling now. I think there was many versions, because when I had my experience, my vision quest with Sean Bond, I felt myself sitting in a chair. The chair was amplifying my abilities, and I managed to kind of step out of myself so I could see what I looked like in the chair. And I do believe I looked like a young boy, so it's possible that that was just a clone version of me that was still had my soul essence, and that's what I connected into. That was my altar, which I was able to reintegrate and bring home for healing. And so that was quite a big deal. So yeah, so I've been doing some research and I wanted to get it on record. That this is in the UK. This is the UK programs that are linked in completely with global programs, okay? So assets are taken from all over the UK. Jessica Morocco also did kind of reference that I wasn't just used as an asset, I was used as an overseer. I was used as a scientist as well within this similar project, and that seems to be true of me in many different projects. There was multiple versions of me within the projects, multiple ages that had multiple roles. There's a lot of kind of scientist role, working with super soldiers, creating super soldiers, creating my own particular brand of super soldier in a way has come up recently. And so I just thought I'd share that with you and get this documented of the research that I'm doing right now, just in case that research somehow disappears. Yeah, so I found a local news article about it, and I found references in the ownership of that shipping yard that connects it into aerospace and things like that, which is interesting, isn't it? So I'm doing small updates on my diary just so I can track my progress as I go. I'm not looking for comments or feedback on this. I'm literally just sharing in the hope that it helps somebody else start to track down and break down and bring forward their own memories, their own recall. There are people in the community that I work with, and I generally work with, say, 4 different people to verify what I'm bringing forward. Yeah, so just so you guys know, these are my experiences coming forward, and then I might work with somebody else to just get some clarity, or just to confirm, yeah, I'm not getting mad on that. That is exactly what I saw, and things like that. So I've not had any regressions so far. I've just had that one vision quest with Sean Bond, which we went quite deep. So it basically was like being regressed, but we were consciously aware at all times. So I was able to come out of it very quickly towards the end when I thought, nope, I've had enough here. And I came back, because when you're dealing with things like Montauk, when you're dealing with projects where there's a lot of torture, a lot of mind fracturing, obviously that's going to be uncomfortable for some people, and integrating that process of allowing yourself to experience and see those memories, there's going to be lots of blocks in place. So that's something that I'm working through now. And it's not easy, it's not for everybody, so please use your discernment. Please seek out help of trusted professionals to support you through this process. I'm documenting my experiences as part of the Full Disclosure Now movement, so that you can see what it's like and how it impacts me over this experience. Okay, so thank you for watching, and yep, please like and subscribe. Thanks very much.